Wow. Right. All right. So I'll let you see me later. So, all right. All right. So today, Eric and myself, we're going to be discussing phishing in a short form a little bit. Some of the processes that go into it, a couple discussions with it, and then at the end, we're going to be releasing a new tool. So let's get started here. The agenda for today is going to be, well, first we're going to introduce who we are. Then we're going to get into what is phishing, the phishing attack process, a couple of tools that can be used during that, possibly a little bit of how you go about defending or prepping for defending against phishing attacks. Then finally, the quick little demo of the new tool at the end of the presentation. Myself, I'm Adam Compton. I've been in the information security field for quite some time. I've been doing pen testing for about a decade and a half. People still ask me, am I a pen tester? What am I? I always refer to myself as a programmer that does pen testing. I know other people have different backgrounds, but I went to school for programming. I didn't go to school for pen testing, so. Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Gershman. So I started learning about security back in the early 2000s in high school. Eventually, I was able to turn that into a career as a systems administrator, and for the last 2 years, I've worked in security full-time for a local laboratory. So I help run the local DC865 group. We meet the first and third Thursday of the month at Knox Makers. That's my only shameless plug for the entire presentation.
All right. Sounds good.
So DEF CON has a number of groups that are basically local social groups. And DC865 is the DEF CON group for the 865 area code.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right. So let's get started a little bit now that you know who we are. What is phishing? Yeah, the obligatory little image there. So at its core, phishing is nothing more than sending some electronic message to a target, an attacker sending an electronic message to a target, trying to convince them or coerce them into providing information, sensitive information, or perform some action that might give the attackers some specialized access to a file system, to data, something of that nature. At its core, that's what it is. It can take many different forms. It can take a form of email, instant message, any other form, SMS I've even seen as well. Phishing started, at least the term itself started back in 1995 with AOL Hell, and we'll just talk about that here in a little bit. But it started out with just people running Visual Basic and other scripting commands like that at the time, trying to imitate being a AOL admin over instant message, trying to get people's credentials, things of that nature. And that was one of the first times the term phishing actually appeared anywhere, and then it was actually with an F instead of a PH. But things have progressed considerably over the 20 years since then, and people still fall victim to it every day. This is just a screenshot of AOL Hell, somebody trying to phish somebody via instant messenger. If Eric wants to point to fun things on there. Okay, Vanna?
Here's the instant messenger.
Yes.
And it's basically trying to compromise the account.
You want to say something? Go ahead.
Sure. So here, it's scripting the message to try and compromise someone's account. This is a chat room attack where they're trying to steal credentials.
Yeah. And it worked in 1995, and versions of it still work today. Well, not necessarily with AOL, but... All right. So you're going to do a phishing attack, or somebody does a phishing attack against you or a company. What are they doing? What are they after? More times than not, they're looking for either access into the network or credentials, which in turn gives them access into the network. They might be looking for, not necessarily the credentials, but they might be looking for PII, personally identifiable information that then they could use to create credit cards in your name, or they're looking for PHI, personal healthcare information, social security numbers, any number of information like that, possibly even corporate espionage style information. The reasons vary considerably. There's been cases where people are stealing Bitcoin wallets, things of that nature. Predominantly, it's fame or financially motivated. There's 3 general categories of phishing. You're either going to do a generic phishing attack, which is targeting people at random. That's usually the type of spam you get in your inbox, things of that nature. There's not a particular target in mind. The attacker's just mass sending out this phishing attack, hoping to get a bite. Then you have spear phishing, where they're targeting a particular group of people. They're targeting a particular company, something of that nature. The information security people in the Knoxville area, something like that. It's more of it's still generalized, but it's a little more focused. You can put a little more thought into the message that's in the email or the SMS or whatever. And then you have whaling. Whaling is you're going after that CEO. You're going after that chief financial officer. You're not really concerned with everybody else at that time. You're wanting that person. You want their access, something of that along that lines. Most times when I do phishing attacks for corporations, during contracts, we're usually going after the spear phishing style attack, not necessarily the whaling. Occasionally we do that. Very rarely do we do the phishing, mostly because we're contracted by a company. Next question would be, why would people do phishing attacks? The short answer is it works. You're attacking the person. You're not attacking the system at that point. And it's really hard to apply a software update to a person. There's training and preparation and things of that nature, but people are lazy. People forget information. They forget the protocols, and they still click on the link. They still open the attachment. Hardware, software, it doesn't forget. And predominantly that's why. It's because it works and people are lazy. All right, the phishing process. If you're going to perform a phishing engagement, a phishing attack, let me preface this. The majority of this talk is going to be from the perspective of a consultant or an in-house information security officer performing a phishing attack, an authorized legal phishing attack against a target, a known target. Many of these same steps, procedures, comments can be applied to the malicious people out there going after people as well, but I'm speaking from my experience, which has been the consultant point of view. In a phishing attack or a phishing exercise, there's primarily 4 stages you're going to go through. The first one is recon. You're trying to find information about your target. That might be target email addresses, their positions in the company. What kind of company are they? Are they healthcare? Are they financial? What are they? What kind of mail systems do they have? Login pages, things that you might want to clone later. Set up and deploy. You're going to set up and deploy whatever systems you need. Collecting responses, post-exploitation. What do you do when they start biting on your phishing attacks? And reporting. You're going to go into some sort of report at the end, whether it's something short or more lengthy. In the recon phase, there's a couple of different things you're going to do. Like I said before, you're looking for just information about your target. If you're a large corporation and you're doing this against a known target or something of that nature, there are ways you can buy large address lists from particular vendors out there. I think there's a number of them online you can find. Or you can build them yourself by going to Google, going to LinkedIn, going to any of these social media sites, and just search for the company name. You'll find people who list themselves as employees. You can build your target list that way. Anything that you find during this phase might not necessarily be immediately useful to you during your phishing attack, but it may be available. It may be important at some point down the road, because right now you might just be finding your targets, but later on you're wanting to do a site cloning to build a phishing site. Information from this phase is going to come in handy. You might want to use their mail server if they're an open relay. That's going to be handy down the road. And during this phase, there are 2 different types of information gathering. Go ahead and throw that out there because people discuss it a lot. You have active recon and passive recon. In the realm of internet recon, active means you're touching their system, whether it's a DNS request to their system, you're looking at their website, you're connecting to their SMTP server, their mail server, something of that nature. Passive is you're going to third-party sites, like I said before, Google. You're going to Shodan if you want to look up information that way. Shodan has a lot of information on there. You can go to social media sites, things of that nature. All that's considered passive because if the target looks at their network logs, they're not going to see you touching their systems. There's a lot of tools out there that can help do this recon phase for you. This is just a sampling of them, the ones that are more common that I see people use. Right off the bat, you have Meta Goofil and Foca. These are definitely can be very active tools. They will go out and scan the target's website, find any files, pictures, things of that nature hosted there, and then do a analysis of the metadata contained in those files, which can be usernames, system names, printer names, IP addresses, software, any number of things that might be useful during your social engineering phishing attack later on. Next up, you have NetGlove and Maltego. These are more general purpose ones where you can give them any number of transforms and features. You can give them a particular company name, and from that you can make your way all the way down to all the employees and their social media sites and what have you. It's not quite automated. It can be in a certain way, but it's a very useful tool. Keep in mind, Maltego is a paid tool. There is a free version of it as well. Then, of course, you have the strictly command line ones of Recon NG and the Harvester. The Harvester is pretty straightforward in that you can it just pulls down target email addresses for a particular company and does a decent job of identifying potential systems belonging to that company as well, based on DNS brute forcing dictionary attacks. Recon NG is a Swiss Army knife of sorts of it as well, much like Maltego is, in that it has lots of different features. You can query LinkedIn, you can do Google searches, and there's lots of features in there. All of these work very well during the recon phase. During the setup and deploy, one of the things that you're going to want to need potentially is you need to be able to send emails, and you're probably going to want to set up a domain. Why would you want to set up a custom DNS domain? Well, it's going to make your attacks look more valid. For example, if a company is, let's say you're going after, let's pick one of the large ones, Microsoft. You can change the O to an A in micro, so Macrosoft or something like that. It's something trivial, something small that the person isn't hopefully going to notice, more likely to entice them to click on the link as opposed to if it was a strict IP. That's just one of those things. Also, if you have a domain registered, you're likely going to have an email address associated with it that comes with the registration, so you can send email that way. Or you can find mass mailers online, which allow you to send out lots of emails. These are typically paid. Or you can find an open relay, whether it's hosted by yourself, some third party, or the company itself. I've found many times that the company I'm targeting, their mail server is an open relay, which makes my job a lot easier on that aspect. Next, you're going to want to deploy a website of some kind if you're not doing an attachment-based attack. Attachment-based attacks, you're going to need to build that, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But if you're doing a credential harvesting, a browser exploit, something of that nature, you need a website. And in the website, you're going to need a web server. You're going to need any site that you want to clone, or a web application or website that you're wanting to build from scratch. One way or another, you're going to want to have a website out there, and these are just some of the common things that I encounter when I'm doing it. Exploits and other attachments. I said if you're doing an attachment-based attack, you're wanting to build out that malicious attachment. You want to build out that malicious payload. If you're doing a browser exploit, using something like a browser exploitation framework, BEEF, you're going to want to set that up, get it set up. You can use something like, I'll discuss some of this later, like Social Engineering Toolkit or any of these other tools that will allow you to attack the browsers, things of that nature. And as I say at the bottom, one of the most important things that you need to do during this phase before you start sending anything to the customer in the form of emails, test everything. Once you start sending those emails, you can't really back up. Because if you send those emails and they click on the link and it goes to the wrong IP or your payload fails, you really don't get a second chance at that. So make sure everything works on your own environment before you start sending it out to the customer. So let's say that you got everything set up, you did your recon, you set everything up, and you deploy it, you send your emails, everything's fine. You start collecting data back, whether it's credentials or it's reverse shell if you're doing attachment-based attacks and of that nature. What are you going to do with that? This comes into the same thing that you're going to encounter during most pen test engagements, whether it's phishing or not. You're going to need to have your post-exploitation lined up. What are you going to do? Are you going to just sit there and capture the credentials and report on it? Well, if that's what the customer wants, fine. But most likely, you're going to take those credentials, take that reverse shell access, and do something with it. You're going to want to go into their network, log into their OWA or what have you, search for interesting information, take screenshots as you're going along for the report. If you have a remote shell access, jump on, see what you can do. In short, you're going to want to pillage as much as you can within the scope of your contract. And finally, create that report. Everybody hates doing it. You got to make that report if you're doing a paid engagement. If you're not being paid to do it, it's up to you, I guess. But most of the time I'm doing this, it's for pay. So, and we're going to step over to Eric now.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to set up this.
What's going on? Oh, the clicker.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get the clicker. Okay, so I created a walkthrough of a credential harvesting attack using Morning Catch. Now, Morning Catch is a vulnerable virtual machine that was created by Raphael Mudge in order to demo phishing and client-side attacks. So here we have the Morning Catch server, and it's running the website and the mail server for Morning Catch Phishing Industries. There's a number of users, including the CEO and the sysadmin, and then we have an attacker over here. The attacker has registered a domain that looks similar to Morning Catch, Mornin Catch, without the G. You can see here that they look very similar, but you can tell the difference when you line them up. So in this example, we're going to be stepping through the reconnaissance, the setup and deployment of our attack, and then we're going to be collecting responses. So starting with Recon, we find the morningcatch.ph website. Immediately we see that there's an employee directory right here, and there's also an employee login here. So let's go to the employee directory. The employee directory actually contains the name, position, and email of everyone in the company. We see that there's the CEO, Richard Bourne, and then the sysadmin, Boyd Genius. This is going to be really vital for targeting our attack. So moving on to the employee login, we get to the Morning Catch corporate email. Let's start by cloning the site. There's a number of purpose-built tools, and there's a lot of different ways to clone a site. In this example, we're just using wget. And after we clone the site using wget, we go through and we fix the site. And this next part is very important. In order for our attack to be successful, we need a way to capture the username and password credentials once they're entered into the cloned site. We can write a small PHP script that will record all of the session variables and forward the victim to the new site. In this case, we're taking the username and password, and we're recording it to creds.txt on our cloned site web server. And then we're forwarding them to the real site, to the legitimate mail site. Does that make sense to everybody? Very cool. Do you have a question? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I raised my hand. So this is probably the most important part of our attack. So if we stop the script here, the script wouldn't be executed. We need to go into the mail site and change the form element to be our new form. And here we changed it from index.html to form.php. So now that we have cloned the site and we've created a way to record the data, we need to set up the server and finally test our attack. So here we are correcting the permissions for our cloned site and then starting up Apache. So here we have the test version of the site. We go and we log in as Hans, and then we go to check our creds.txt file, and we find Hans and his password, iHeartCats. So now that we have set up our clone site, we need to figure out how to send the phishing email. Using the information that we collected earlier, we go back to the reconnaissance phase, and we start looking at the mail server. During a vulnerability scan, we identify that the mail server will allow us to impersonate any of the users unauthenticated. So using Telnet, we craft the phishing email to the CEO, Richard Bourne, recipient 2. And then the email is from Boyd Genius, the sysadmin, asking him to look at a change to the mail site. And here we have our malicious morningcatch.ph/mail. So Richard receives the email in his mail client. It's from Boyd Genius, and he clicks on the link and visits it. Then he signs in with his credentials, and here you can see the clone site's domain, morningcatch. Once he signs into his credentials, he's immediately forwarded to the legitimate site. If he was already logged into the site, it would just bring him to his inbox. So looking at the responses, we see our test credentials from before, and then we also see our Bourne and then his password of password. So from here we can test the credentials, and we can create a report with screenshots of our attack and include the server logs. Now, I've posted this as a walkthrough on my GitHub page, and I'll be linking to it later. I'll also be posting it to VulnHub. VulnHub is a repository for vulnerable virtual machines. Does anybody have any questions about this? So, moving on, there's a number of different phases to incident response. This may look familiar to you if you've seen SANS and NIST has a guide to incident response. And there's different phases that you can, where you can secure and prevent and handle an incident. So the one we're going to focus on is one of the most important, which is user awareness and testing. We can do this by performing phishing exercises. So Adam is going to be going over some of the tools available to make performing those phishing exercises easier.
All right, thank you, Eric. So yeah, like I said before, there's tons of tools out there to do parts of pen testing, to do parts of phishing. They're all out there to help you all out. And in a moment, you'll see another one that I've written just to add to the whole menagerie. But for here, some of the three most common ones that I see people using are SET, Social Engineering Toolkit, done by TrustedSec, Phishing Frenzy, and BEEF, or Browser Exploitation Framework. Technically speaking, BEEF can do phishing, but that's usually not what people use it for. They usually use it as part of a phishing attack or something of that nature to hook the browser and do additional things. So we'll go back to SET. Social Engineering Toolkit is one of the first main toolkits out there for doing SET. It's been around for a number of years. Very useful, very awesome tool. Has a whole kitchen sink set of options in there. One of the things that it doesn't quite do, at least last time I checked, was it doesn't really do the recon phase. It expects you to do that, and then you can build out from there. It's a whole menu-driven environment, much like Metasploit or a lot of other command line tools. Phishing Frenzy is similar to SET and similar to Metasploit Pro's phishing exercise campaign manager, if you've ever seen that, and that it's a web-based interface. You can go in, set up templates, set your targets, and send it off from there. Does a lot of the same basic stuff that SET does, but it's GUI-based if that's your forte. There's other tools out there. I know I'm not touching on them all, and I'm hearing about them all the time, but these are the ones that I see most often and the ones that I've actually made use of myself. Well, those are great. They're easy, but I'm lazy. Can we even make that easier? What can we do to help limit the amount of time I have to be involved in doing this phishing exercise? The answer is a lot of these you can automate. For example, BEEF has its RESTful API that you can hook to, make calls and pull down which sites have been hooked, issue new commands. You have Recon NG, as we were referring to before about the Recon phase. It actually has Recon CLI, which allows you to do a command line API call, if you will. You have set with SE Automate. There's other ones like the Harvester and DNS Map and all these other tools which can play a part of your whole phishing exercise with the Recon or what have you. That are just command line tools. And using stuff like Python and Bash and other scripting tools, it's easy to issue those commands, grab the output, parse it into something useful, and then continue on. As I said, I'm a programmer and I'm lazy, so I ended up taking those same steps and the steps that I've been doing for years of doing the Recon, setting up the websites and all that, and wrote a little tool around it called Speed Phishing Framework, or Speedfish Framework. Yes, I forced it to be SPF because I just like to play on the sender policy framework. I thought it was amusing. It probably is going to come back to bite me at some point, but I thought it was amusing, so I'm leaving it at that. What does it do? Actually, it does the same things I just said, but it automates it. It can go through all the various stages of a standard phishing exercise, such as Recon, set up and deploy, the collection of data, and then the reporting. It's written in Python, and it can be as automated or not automated as you wish. By default, it goes in and query and asks you at each step, but as with a lot of other great tools, a -Y says just answer yes and run. And you just sit back and hope at that point, but it's worked fairly well for me so far, and it's been used on a small number of phishing exercises for myself and for the company I work for. And it's been fairly successful in every case so far. And it's minimal setup. One of the things I want to say is it is all self-contained at this point, except for a couple Python dependencies. It can make use of external tools. Currently, the Harvester is the only one that I'm incorporating. I have Recon NG, Beef, and a few others that I'm developing the hooks for, but I just haven't implemented at this time for this talk. So it should be able to be grabbed from GitHub and run on pretty much any Debian-based system at this point, hoping to expand that into other systems later. So like I said before, it does all the different steps of the phishing engagement. It can harvest email addresses from the internet. It can set up and setups and host various websites based on templates that are available, which are easily added to, and we'll get to that later. It will send the phishing emails. It will craft the emails, send the emails to the targets it collected previously, instructing them to go to one or more of the phishing websites it stood up. It will then record the credentials of any information entered on those websites, as well as key logging all keys pressed while on that website. So if the customer types in something and hits the backspace, types a few other things, what have you, all that is being captured just in case you can glean some information from that. And when it's finally done, it creates a very simple but a workable report off of it. It's an HTML-based report, but it does also store all the logs, all the data into a directory structure, which is easily accessed and parsed by yourself in whatever method you wish. Now we have a demo, and if the demo gods work, we get to do the live demo. If it doesn't, we have a pre-recorded video. If that fails, I have more slides. So we'll see what happens here. What's that? Yeah. And if that fails, I'll dance, I guess. I don't know. So let's move this here. Sorry.
Here. Let's try this.
Wow, this is gonna be interesting. Let me see if I can turn this around so I can see that. All right. So, all right. Actually, I'll just hope. No, that'll work. Can I do that? No, I'll just work it like this right now. So, right now, I'll hold it.
Yeah, why don't we change it to mirror and all?
Go talk for just
a
second. Sorry about that.
So does anybody have any questions so far? We're just going to take care of the video right now, and it's probably going to be a lot easier to do mirroring and not type and go like this. So, are there any questions? Oh, go ahead.
All right, sorry about that. Sorry for the technical difficulties. So we're sitting in the directory I downloaded from GitHub, and I just want to go up a directory here. All right. And if you look around, it has the standard install file, the license, README, all of that. So let's look at the requirements. There. One-handed typing, yay. Currently, it depends on 3 external tools, or modules if you want to. DNS Python and the Twisted library, Twisted Web, as well as Phantom.js to do some screenshots. Is it? It won't.
Can you guys read this? Yes, go ahead and ask.
Oh, okay, here. Let me do this. There. Stop. There. That'll work. Let's try this again now. All right. Can everybody still hear me? All right. So we're in the directory. CD into SPF. And we see the base directory of the tool. Go ahead and run the SPF tool with the obligatory -H. And you see the usage policy, or the usage file. There's all kind of different things in here. And you can take a look at it in your own leisure. But some of the things that are going to be useful is there's a --all and a --test. The --all basically says gather emails, send emails, load the website, and answer yes to all questions. The --test basically does the same thing, but instead of sending the emails, it simulates sending the emails. So if you want to test everything before you send it off to the customer, that would be my suggestion. One of the things it does make use of is a config file. So here's just a view of the config file. It's some of the basic things you want to do in there. You can set up your SMTP information. Who are you sending email as? You can do Gmail. You can do your own. So there's other options in there, and if you read through some of the README and all that, you'll find some of the other options. Right now, we're just going to leave this alone because we're just going to do a simulate when we get to it. So jump on down. Okay. Let's go ahead and run it with, let's see what the options, okay. So run it with the --test, and we're specifying the domain of example.com. Let's go after them. So as you can see, it's going out, it's using the default.cfg config file. You can specify different ones. Without specifying different ones, it looks for that one. First thing it's doing is going out and searching on the internet using Google, Bing, Dogpile, Yandex, and so forth, just trying to find target email addresses. And Yandex and Baidu seem to take a little while, but we'll step through this in a minute. This basically takes the same approach that the Harvester does, if you've ever used that tool. It uses a very similar process, and some of the additional search engines and tweaks I've done, I've actually committed out to the Harvester, so it's very close at this point between the two. And it looks like Yandex is not reachable at this point, so let's let it process on. Come on, you can do it. Well, while this is running, just a second, does anybody have a question I can answer? It's going to take about another 5 seconds or 10 seconds here, so go ahead.
Use microphone to your left, please.
Microphone to my left?
Please go to the microphone.
Oh.
Over there. Well, say your question, we can repeat
Do you
it.
find this tool any more successful or less successful than other tools?
Yes. Do I find this tool any more or less successful than other tools? The answer is, it depends. It depends. It's easier. It's quicker in many cases, other than right now for some reason. Okay, there it's moved on past Yandex now. It's usually quicker, it's easier, and it's a very simplified version of phishing. So if you're just wanting to do credential harvesting at this point, I find that this works better. Now, if you're wanting to do something a little more complex or target different scenarios, then something like Phishing Frenzy or SET or Social Engineering Toolkit might work better at this point. Additional future enhancements I'm planning on doing to this will help level the playing field a little bit. My goal is never to be replacing those, but it's going to be to develop this tool into something that is quick and easy to use to deploy. And if you want to do something more advanced, you can always rely on one of the other tools that facilitate that better. So let's scroll back up here. And that is a little hard to read. So let me see if I can zoom out. Oh, well, that didn't help any, so my bad. So what you'll see is it finished with the email harvesting. It says it found 41. It then tried to use the harvester. I have the path of the harvester. Actually, I don't think I have the path right on this one, or it would have tried that. Then it proceeds to print out the list of email targets. Right now, you can see that because this is example.com, there's lots of bogus emails out there. That's why I'm using this one as just an example. You'll see like phone numbers and stuff like that, but it found 41 of them. Next thing it does is it starts the phishing web server. It found 3 different templates. It found an OWA, it found a Citrix, and a Office 365 template that I have in the directory. It's dynamic. It will find the ones it can. Then it launches those on 3 different ports. It has Office 365. Let's go ahead and open that one. So this is Office 365 screenshot. It also has a, oh, that's the one I just did. So look at the OWA, standard OWA login, and then the Citrix login, which is, these can all be tweaked if you want to go into the templates directory and do so. So it's standard little Citrix style login. Then it sets up a virtual hosting, or virtual host names for them. So Office is office.example.com. That example.com that is shown there, that is the newly registered domain that you have in there. That's defined in the config file. So if you registered exampo.com or something like that, that's what would show up there. Then it goes on, it finds 3 email phishing templates, the ones that associated with those websites. Then it proceeds to start sending emails. It does this in a round-robin fashion. It iterates through all the emails that were collected, and the first email is sent with the first email template, the second one with the second template, so forth until it finishes. Then it goes back and starts looping around. So you can see the first one was sent with the Office 365, the next one with OWA, then Citrix, then it goes back to Office 365, and so forth. I do this so that it evenly distributes across so you can maximize the efficiency, possibly. I found it works well, so I've used it. And then finally, you see that it's monitoring the phishing website activity, and hit Control-C whenever you're done. So let's jump over to here. Let's go to sign in here. You can start typing in, my name is Bob, my password is Apple, hit sign in, and right now it's just taking you to error. That too is definable. Where do you want it to go to? Do you want it to go to another website? Do you want it to go wherever? That's all definable. And if we go back and look, you can see that all the accesses to the website are logged as to when and what IP address hit it. Then you have all these entries, which are key logs. You can see BOB, tab, Apple, and so forth. And why is that scrolled off the screen? Oops. And then you see at the end you have credentials, password form, Apple, username form, Bob. It'll do this for all 3 of the, whoops, let's go back. It'll do this for all 3 of the, stop it. For all of the different websites, and it'll log and key log them all. So if we go back, and let's say that we're finished at this point, we can hit Control-C. It cleans it all up, finishes, and it tells you that your report is located at this file. So let's go ahead and load that in Iceweasel. And you can see this is, like I said, simple report, but it's all there. You have the report is for phishing exercise against example.com, start date, end date. The first campaign was sent was against Citrix. It shows you the email that was sent with the subject and all, what it would look like when it was arrived by the targets, the email addresses it was sent to, the screenshots of what the website looks like, and any captured credentials. We didn't do one. We didn't enter any for Citrix or OWA, so let's jump down to the Office 365. You can see that it has one captured credential of exactly what was outputted to the screen earlier, and you have your stats of 14 emails sent, 1 access to the website, and 1 credential collected. Very simple, not a lot of detail in there, but it's enough to get going off of. And if you were to look into, why is that? Oh yeah, I can just do that. That'll work. So if I go into the directory that it created, and you look around in there, you'll see all the raw data files that were collected. All the PNGs are the screenshots you saw in the report. There is one file here that is the most comprehensive, and that's the process.log. That is all the output that came out of the tool logged into a file with timestamps in front of each of the commands. So, I mean, everything that came out is dumped into here. Otherwise, you have other ones like, what was that? The Office 365 log. It's all the data that came from the Office 365 website, all the key logs, all the access credentials, so forth. And if you want to look at one of the template files, it has the sample email that was sent and the targets. So all the raw data is in here. If you want to parse it yourself, I provide the HTML just in case you want something quick and dirty to provide out. Now, if you didn't need to go through all those steps, you don't need to do everything, you have some other way to send the emails, and you just want the website up and going, that's an easy enough one to do. You just run the web.py, it needs a config file, let's give it the default one, and it has the websites up and going. That easy. It's fired up those 3 templates with the different ports associated and the different virtual host names. You can include that in whatever email you want to send out through some other means if you wish, and all the logging is done here. So if we go back and open up, let's say this one, and let's see here. So you're in here and you start typing, you can see that it's key logging and everything as well. So you have all that data sitting around as well. And there's other options in here as well, but this is the fundamental use of it. If you wanted to do, well, let's go back here. spf.py-h. Oh, Control C. Okay. -h. One of the options at the very bottom is that automatic -y, which is the automatic answer yes to all questions, and that's enabled in the --all and --test. Actually, in the -test it isn't in the -all. So that's one way you can build it out, make it more interactive if you wish. You can also provide it a list of email addresses if you wish. Instead of having it go out and collect its own, customer gave you a list, you can provide that. It'll use it that way. And that is it for that. And we'll, yes?
How do you generally deliver that report to your customer?
Oh, that report, I don't necessarily give that report to a customer, but all the data that's in that report, I do provide to a customer in the body of a larger report. Most of our reports that I send out are going to have your standard cover page, executive summary, all of that. This is more of just the details that go into like the findings section of the report, discussing what we did and the kind of findings. It's going to have different formatting, but all that same data goes in there. Once that's cleaned up and finished, it's bundled, peer-reviewed, proofread, and then sent out to the customer. If the customer does not want their password shown, that obviously will have to be sanitized before it gets sent out. Beyond that, it's much the same way as it's displayed there, just in a Microsoft Word document that then is generated into PDF and so forth. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
All right.
What was going to be my next question? So you were good.
All right. So we did the demo, so we can skip over these. These are just in case everything failed. So it's your config file, all the standard things that we went through, and then future features. Among the different things I can do this now. Among the different things I plan on doing between now and into the summer is there's 2 main features I want to add: the company profiler and the pillage feature. I know it's a way overused term, but still, the company profiler. What it does is it will go out. You'll provide it the company domain name, company name. It will go out and do a DNS lookup, dictionary tag on that domain, find all of the subdomains, if there's an OWA, if there's a mail, email, SMTP, things of that nature, and try to identify things such as login pages, what mail servers they use, things of that nature. Some basic active recon against that company. It might include some passive. From that point, it will then, based on the data it collected and the templates that are available within SPF, it will determine which of those are likely to work. If the customer does not have a Citrix login, it probably won't use the Citrix template. If it has an OWA, it will probably use the OWA one, things of that nature. That can obviously be overridden, but that's the kind of logic that's going into it. Additionally, if it finds that they use a Lotus Notes login, it would then, and we don't have a template for that, it would try to do a site clone of that website login and then make a template and then deploy that automatically. So it will auto-tailor itself to the target that you're going after. That's the company profiler. The pillage builds off of that in that if a IMAP or a POP account was identified, it would then, any credential it finds, it will try to authenticate to that and flag whether it was successful or not, meaning was it a valid or non-valid. It will be recorded either way, but if it is valid, it will then go into the pillage portion, which is it will start searching through the subject lines and bodies and what things of that nature as it can, trying to find things that match sensitive keywords such as password, login, account, SSN, things of that nature, employee. And if it finds one, it'll download it. This is something I'm planning on working between now and August before Las Vegas and trying to have in there. If anybody has any suggestions of other features that would like to see added in or would like to help on one of those, by all means speak up and help me out. We can talk later. And beyond that, incorporating more external tools. I'm already planning Recon NG, Beef, possibly SET, and a few others. Possibly more fancy reports. I don't know. I think I'm fine with it as it is. Possibly just more verbose logging in places. And with that, we say thank you. And if you have any questions, yeah, thank you. Yes. Info on us, where you can reach us. And if there's any questions, by all means, let us know, and we'll try to address any that we can in the time that's remaining. And the tool can be downloaded from my personal GitHub at the moment at Tatanis/SPF. Thank you. Yes?
Out of all the times you've used this, have you not been able to catch after at least one credential?
Every time I've used this, all right. Of all the times that this tool has been used on an engagement, has it always had success? The answer is yes. It has always managed to get around a 20% success rate on just the base utilization of this without any tweaking or modifications. Anybody else? If anybody's raising their hand up top, I can't see you. There's lights in my eyes. So, no one?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.